Kale stood on the obsidian balcony of the war temple of First Blood, his eyes tracking the fire that rained from the heavens. Each streak of light was a human ordinance, crude, inelegant weapons from a crude, inelegant species. Yet they were terribly effective. The sky above Redic Prime burned in shades of orange and violet. The atmospheric shields that had protected the holy capital for 3,000 cycles flickered like dying stars, each impact sending ripples of failing energy across the dome. Beyond them, the human fleet hung in orbit like a blasphemy made manifest. Dozens of warships, their hulls scarred from previous battles, their weapons glowing with the sick light of ionized plasma. It was obscene that humans should attack them. Humans, those twisted reflections, those failed copies of the perfect form. The holy ones of Retic stood upright as humans did, had 2 arms as humans did, skin and eyes and mouths that spoke. But where humans were soft and weak, the holy ones were strong. Where human skin was pale and fragile, Retic skin was deep crimson, thick enough to turn a blade. Where humans reached perhaps 6 feet in height, the holy ones towered at 7 or 8, their frames dense with muscle and holy purpose. The humans were like children who had discovered fire and thought themselves gods. They were the younger brothers who had wandered from the path, who had rejected the divine truth and embraced godlessness. And now these inferior copies, these mistakes, dared to rain fire upon the holy world itself. "Brother Kao?" Waprestathun appeared at his side, his ceremonial armor scorched, his left arm hanging limp. Blood, true crimson blood, not the weak red water that flowed in human veins, dripped from a gash across his forehead. "The outer sanctums have fallen. The humans, they breached the sacred grounds with their machines." Kale's jaw tightened, his teeth grinding. 3 weeks ago he had led the purge of the human colony on Kestos 4, 17,000 souls. He remembered the way their settlement burned, how their screams had echoed across the communication channels as they begged for mercy in their guttural, primitive tongue. He had felt the gods' approval in his chest, that warm certainty that came with righteous slaughter. The humans there had looked so much like his own people, enough, that killing them felt like culling the weak from the herd, like cutting away diseased branches from a healthy tree. The humans had no gods. They had no right to judge. They had no right to retaliate. They were supposed to understand their place in the universe, beneath the holy ones, subservient to their stronger, older brothers. The Retic had walked the stars for 3,000 years before humans had even learned to leave their own atmosphere. The Retic had conquered 1,000 worlds while humans were still killing each other with gunpowder and steel. And yet here they were, burning the holy world like they had any right to justice. "How dare they?" Kale hissed, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance that marked his people's speech, deeper and richer than human voices could ever achieve. "How dare these godless vermin, these broken copies, raise their hands against the holy ones, against the chosen of the Retic?" Another explosion, closer now. The war temple shuddered. Somewhere in the lower levels, novices would be praying, prostrating themselves before the altar of eternal conquest, begging the gods to smite these invaders. Fools. The gods helped those who acted, not those who cowered. The gods had given the holy ones strength and height and purpose. Prayer alone would not save them. Dun's eyes fixed on him with desperate clarity. The Council of Sacred Wrath convenes in the Chamber of 9 Martyrs. They call for all war priests to... The council is dead. Kale turned from the burning sky to face his brother, or they will be within the hour. The humans do not make war as we do. They do not seek to convert or conquer. They seek extinction. He had seen it on Kestos 4, in reverse. The humans there had fought with the desperation of a species that knew no quarter would be given. Because none had been, the holy ones did not take prisoners. The weak did not deserve to live, and the strong should die in glorious combat. These were the laws of the Retic. written in the blood of 10,000 conquered worlds. The humans should have learned from this. They should have knelt. Instead, they had learned too well. Now those laws had come home. "We must flee," Kale said, and the words tasted like ash. "Gather the sanctified few. We go to the temple of eternal radiance. We take the gods with us." Toon's eyes widened. "The idols? Brother, we cannot. The weight alone." "We take the gods." Kale's voice reverberated with harmonic fury, the battle cant that had preceded 100 massacres. His voice could do things human voices could not. Reach frequencies that made the weak tremble, that resonated in bone and blood, or we are not worthy to call ourselves their chosen. The holy ones of Retic will not die here. We will endure. We will remember, and when we are strong again, we will teach these inferior humans the price of their blasphemy. We will show them what happens when the younger brother strikes the elder. The war priest bowed, his hand crossing over his chest in ritual acknowledgement. "By the fire of the first conquest, by the blood of the last," Kale completed. They moved through the war temple like vengeful shadows, gathering others as they went. War priest next, her skin decorated with ritual scars that told the story of 30 conquered races. Zealot Commander Retic, who had personally overseen the purge of the Thelian resistance. Battle Monk Kor, who had once killed a human commander with his bare hands and worn the skull as a trophy for 6 cycles. That human had looked so much like Q himself. Same basic shape, same arrangement of features, and yet so pathetically less, shorter, weaker, unworthy. 12 of them, in the end. 12 of the most devoted, the most terrible, the most holy. The streets outside were chaos. The shields had finally collapsed, and human kinetic rounds hammered into the ancient stone of the capital city. Buildings that had stood for millennia crumbled like sand. Civilians, workers, merchants, the spiritually weak who tended to the needs of warriors, ran screaming through the streets, their voices broadcasting their terror in the deep, resonant tones of their people. Kyle ignored them. His group moved with purpose toward the Temple of Eternal Radiance, the oldest structure on Redic Prime, the birthplace of their crusade among the stars. Their long strides ate up the distance quickly, each member of his group a full head taller than the civilians who scattered before them like leaves. A female civilian, her skin unmarked by any battle scars, threw herself in front of him. Behind her, 3 children clung to her sides, their eyes wide with fear. She was tall by human standards, perhaps 6.5 feet, but still a full foot shorter than Kale, still weak, still unworthy. "War priest, please, the temple. It has shields, deep bunkers. Please, my children." Kale struck her aside with one arm, not even breaking stride. She tumbled into the rubble, the young ones scattered. Their cries joined the general cacophony of the dying city. He didn't look back. She was weak. Her children were weak. The strong would survive this day or die gloriously. The weak would simply die. "Brother," Toon said, his tone uncertain. "She is weak," Kale replied. "The gods do not shelter weakness. If she and her spawn die, it is because they deserve death. We preserve what matters. We preserve the faith. We preserve the truth that will show these humans their error." The Temple of Eternal Radiance rose before them, its spiraling towers somehow still intact, its walls covered in the carved names of every world the Holy Ones had conquered. 3,000 worlds, 3,000 civilizations broken beneath the glory of the Retic. Humans had been on that list for barely 200 years, a recent addition, a younger species that should have known better than to rebel against their betters. Now it would be 3001, except this time they were the ones being broken. The temple's interior was eerily quiet. The novices and acolytes had fled or been vaporized. Only the stone remained. And the gods. The pantheon of Retic stood in the central sanctum, each idol carved from different materials looted from different worlds. Carthax the Unyielding, cast in the black iron of Vex Prime, 10 feet tall and weighing 3 tons. Selev the Bloodsinger, sculpted from the crystallized bone of the extinct Moratti species. Vrenthal the Conqueror, formed from gold plundered from 100 treasuries. Each idol was carved in the image of the Holy Ones themselves, towering, powerful, perfect. Nothing like the stunted humans who now burned the world outside. 13 idols in total. 13 gods who had watched over the Holy Ones since the first priest looked up at the stars and decided they should burn. "We'll need the gravity harnesses," Nex said, already moving toward the storage chambers. "And the cargo loaders. The ceremonial transport is in the sub-level hangar." Kale approached the altar of Carthax, his god, the deity of righteous warfare and holy slaughter. He had prayed before this idol before every mission, had felt the cold iron under his hands as he swore oaths of blood and conquest. The idol's face was broad and strong, its crimson skin rendered in perfect detail by the craftsman who had spent decades on its creation. It looked nothing like a human, it looked like perfection. "Forgive us, mighty ones," he whispered in the true tongue, the language that predated their conquest of space. "We flee, but we do not abandon you. We carry you with us, that you might witness our vengeance, that you might see us reclaim our rightful place above these inferior humans." A massive explosion rocked the temple. Dust rained from the ancient ceiling. Somewhere above, human dropships were landing, their infantry fanning out through the city. They would kill everything that moved, just as the Holy Ones had done on Kestus IV, on Mandros, on Pelkata, on 100 other worlds. The difference was that when the Holy Ones did it, it was righteous. It was the strong culling the weak. When humans did it, it was an abomination. The younger brother murdering the elder, the student striking the master. "Move," Kale commanded. They worked with practiced efficiency, strapping the idols into the anti-gravity harnesses, loading them onto the reinforced cargo platforms. The sacred texts came next. Paper and vellum and digital crystals containing 3,000 years of theology and battle doctrine. The Chronicles of Conquest, which listed every species that had knelt or died. The Book of Sacred Fire, which detailed the proper ways to purge the unworthy. The Scrolls of Eternal War, which promised that the strong would inherit the universe and the weak deserved only extinction. There were even texts about the humans, treatises on why they had failed to achieve the perfection of the Holy Ones, theological discussions of whether they were a test from the gods or simply a mistake that needed correction. Outside, the sounds of dying grew louder. The humans were advancing toward the temple district. Of course they were. They knew what these places meant to the Holy Ones. Perhaps they thought destroying the temples would break the spirit of the faithful. They didn't understand. The temples were stone. The faith lived in the hearts of warriors. A crowd had gathered at the temple entrance. Hundreds of civilians, maybe thousands, pressing against the sealed doors. Their voices echoed through the stone, that deep harmonic resonance that marked their species, now twisted with fear. "Let us in. Lee, the temple has shields. We'll die out here. My children, have mercy." Kale sealed the hangar access with a thought, his neural implant interfacing with the temple's ancient systems. The shields around the hangar were independent, military grade. They would hold for another hour, perhaps 2, long enough to escape. The shields around the civilian entrance were weaker. They would fall in minutes. The weak did not deserve the same protection as the sacred. Gunn paused in his work, his arms holding a container of sacred crystals. "Brother, there are thousands outside. We have room on the transport for—" "We have room for the gods," Kyle interrupted. "We have room for the faith. These civilians," he gestured dismissively toward the sealed doors, beyond which the screaming continued. "They contribute nothing to the glory of Retic. They are drones, workers, breeders. They do not fight. They do not kill in the name of the gods. Why should they be saved? They are our people. They are weak. Kale's voice was flat, certain. Look at them, brother. They might as well be humans for all the strength they show. At least we warriors still embody the true perfection of our form. The strong survive or die gloriously. The weak simply die. That is the way of the Retic. That is the truth the gods have taught us. Would you question the gods, brother? Toon's jaw tightened. For a moment, Kale thought he might argue, but the war priest simply lowered his eyes and returned to loading the cargo. Good. Thun understood. Sentiment was weakness, and weakness was human. The ceremonial transport was a relic itself, a ship that had carried missionaries and war fleets to the stars in the early days of their expansion. It was large enough for the 13 idols, the sacred texts, and the 12 chosen warriors. Nothing more. The cargo bay was cramped even for their tall frames, but they made it work, securing everything with the practiced efficiency of warriors who had loaded equipment on 100 campaigns. They loaded the last of the holy treasures as the ceiling above them began to crack. A human bomb, probably. Bunker buster. They were getting close. Kale could hear their voices now, transmitted over the city's dying communication network. Human voices, higher pitched than those of the holy ones, lacking the harmonic depth that came with true perfection. They sounded like children playing at war, except these children had brought enough firepower to kill a world. Start the engines, Kale ordered. The transport hummed to life, its ancient systems powering up with a sound like a prayer. The hangar doors began to open, revealing the burning city beyond. The sky was choked with smoke and fire. Human fighters streaked overhead, their weapons carving through what remained of the capital's defenses. Kale caught glimpses of the human pilots through his enhanced vision, creatures in bulky suits, their faces hidden behind helmets, their forms so similar to his own and yet so pathetically inferior. They might wear armor and fly ships, but they would always be the younger brothers, always be the failed copies. And at the temple entrance, the shields finally failed. The human infantry came through like a tide. Kale caught a glimpse through the internal monitors before he shut them down. Armored figures with weapons raised, the civilians running, stumbling, falling. The humans didn't discriminate between warrior and worker, they simply killed. And they were efficient about it. Trained, coordinated, professional. Kale recognized the tactics because he had used similar ones on Kestos 4. Machine gun fire scattered the monstrous crew, and Kestos whipped up, pulled over his pride. The only difference was that when he had done it, it had been righteous. This was sacrilege. One human soldier paused before a fallen civilian, a female, curled around her children. The soldier was tall for a human, perhaps 6 feet, but still shorter than even the weakest Retic civilian. Through the grainy monitor, Kale saw the human raise its weapon, saw the flare, saw the bodies go still. The human moved on without 1,000 glance, just as Kale had done 1,000 times before. As we did on Kestos 4, a small voice whispered in his mind, as we did on 100 worlds. Kale crushed the thought like an insect. The humans were wrong. They had attacked the chosen of the gods. They had dared to judge the righteous. They had forgotten their place as the younger, weaker brothers. This was not justice. This was sacrilege. "Lift off," he commanded. The transport rose through the hangar bay, emergency protocols overriding the damaged superstructure. They burst through the roof of the temple in a shower of ancient stone, the ship's shields absorbing the impacts. For a moment they were exposed, vulnerable to the human fighters that circled overhead. Kale held his breath. If the humans saw them, if they realized what cargo the transport carried, they might divert forces to stop it. The gods themselves hung in the balance. But the humans were focused on the city below, on the systematic destruction of everything that remained. The transport was small, insignificant. It slipped through their net like a prayer whispered in darkness. Kale allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction. Even in their moment of victory, the humans were limited. They lacked the divine insight of the holy ones. They fought like machines, not like the chosen of gods. Kale stood at the viewing port as they rose through the atmosphere, watching his world die. Cities burned from pole to pole. The sacred sites, the temples, the war monuments, all crumbling under human ordnance. The orbital stations which had coordinated their crusades to 1,000 worlds were debris fields now, torn apart by human battleships. He could see bodies falling through the atmosphere, burning like meteors. The bodies of his people, civilians and warriors alike, caught in the void when the stations were destroyed. Millions dying, perhaps billions before the humans were finished. The Holy Ones of Retic, a species that had brought terror to 100 civilizations, were being exterminated like vermin, like they were no better than the humans themselves. The younger brothers had risen up and murdered the elder. The inferior copies had destroyed the originals. It was an affront to the natural order of the universe. And he felt nothing. No shame, no regret. Only rage. Only the burning certainty that this was wrong, that the humans had committed an unforgivable sin, that the gods themselves must be screaming in fury at this blasphemy. "They will pay," he whispered to the idols that stood in the cargo bay behind him, their carved faces illuminated by the burning world below, the crimson skin rendered in such perfect detail, the powerful frames that embodied everything the humans could never be. By every god in the pantheon, by every drop of sacred blood spilled, they will pay. We will endure. We will rebuild. And we will teach them that the Holy Ones cannot be destroyed. We will teach them that the younger brother cannot kill the elder. We will show them their place. Behind him, Thun and the others had gathered, their eyes fixed on the dying world. They were all tall, all powerful, all perfect in the way the gods had intended. Even injured, even fleeing, they were more than any human could ever be. That was the truth. That had to be the truth. Otherwise, what did any of this mean? "What do we do now, brother?" Nex asked. Her voice was steady, harmonious even in defeat. A human voice would have cracked with emotion. The Holy Ones were stronger than that. Kale turned from the viewport, his eyes glowing with cold certainty in the darkness of the ship. He was 8 feet tall, his frame powerful even by the standards of his people, his crimson skin marked with the scars of 100 battles. He towered over the idols themselves, a living embodiment of everything the gods represented. The humans would never have this. They would never be this. We find others who survived. We gather the faithful. We preserve the gods and the sacred texts. And we wait. His voice carried that perfect harmonic resonance, that depth of tone that marked him as superior to any human. Humans think they have won. They think they have ended us. But faith does not die when worlds burn. Righteousness does not end with defeat. We are the Holy Ones of Retic, and our crusade is eternal. We are the elder brothers, the perfect ones, and we will reclaim our rightful place above these inferior copies. The transport accelerated into the void, carrying its cargo of gods and zealots away from the burning world. Below, Redic Prime continued to die, its screams silent in the vacuum of space, its billions crying out for salvation that would never come. The human fleet maintained its position, methodical and thorough, ensuring that nothing survived. They burned the cities, they destroyed the orbital infrastructure, they targeted the agricultural centers and the industrial complexes and the small towns in the countryside. They were erasing the Holy Ones of Retic from existence, just as the Holy Ones had erased so many others. The weak did not deserve to live. That was what Kale had always believed. That was what the gods taught. The strong survived, and Kale, watching his civilization collapse into ash and memory, was certain, absolutely certain, that he and his brothers were the strong ones. that the humans were wrong, that the gods would judge and the righteous would prevail, that the elder brother would rise again and put the younger in his place. He believed this with every fiber of his being. He believed it as they passed the remains of the defense fleet, the great warships that had carried the Crusades to 1,000 worlds now reduced to debris. He believed it as they passed the outer planets, where human ships hunted down every transport, every escape pod, every desperate attempt at survival. He believed it as the stars swallowed them, and Redic Prime became just another point of light in the darkness, no different from the thousands of other worlds they had burned. He believed it all the way into the darkness between stars, and behind him, strapped into their harnesses, 13 idols stared with blind eyes at nothing at all. Their carved faces were perfect, powerful, everything a holy one should be, everything a human could never be. The gods would return, the righteous would prevail. The elder brother would reclaim his throne. Kale believed this with the certainty of the truly faithful, the absolute conviction of a zealot who had never once questioned whether he might be wrong, and perhaps that was his greatest tragedy. Not that his world had burned, not that his people had been slaughtered, but that even now, even watching everything he had ever known turn to ash, he could not see the simple truth that the humans had learned on Kestos 4, that the Thelians had learned on Pelkata, that 100 species had learned before they died, that there is no righteousness in slaughter, no glory in genocide, no divine mandate in the strong devouring the weak. There was only blood. And now it was his people's blood that painted the stars. The transport fled into the infinite dark, carrying its cargo of dead gods and living fanatics, while behind them the humans finished their work and prepared to go home, carrying their own scars, their own trauma, their own certainty that what they had done was terrible but necessary, the only way to stop a species that would never, ever stop killing. Many thanks to channel member Wes Davies for making this video possible. Many thanks to my channel members and Pathfinders. You all make these videos possible. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to leave this video a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Video shares, memberships, and super thanks help the channel grow as well, so feel free to partner with this channel in that way as we grow. With that all said, thank you again for listening to the story, and thank you for your time. On the left side of your screen are some videos I think you might be interested in. I hope to see you in the next one.